After white opens with pawn to e4, black can respond with the Caro Kann defense, moving pawn to c6. This opening gives black a solid position that avoids a lot of theory associated with other responses to e4, such as the Ruy Lopez and Sicilian defense. If played correctly, black will end up with a better pawn structure, while white can gain a space advantage that delays black's development. After black plays the Caro Kann defense, white typically moves pawn to d4 for better center control, and black moves pawn to d5 to threaten white's e-pawn. White can then proceed with the classical variation, developing knight to c3 to protect its e-pawn while threatening d5. Black now takes with pawn to e4, white recaptures with its knight, black moves bishop to f5, white moves its knight to g3 to evade and threaten the bishop, black retreats its bishop to g6, still maintaining its long diagonal. White pushes pawn to h4 to start pressuring the light-squared bishop. Black responds with pawn to h6, giving its bishop space to retreat. White develops its knight to f3. Black develops knight to d7, which defends the e5 square and will eventually support knight to f6. White pushes pawn to h5, which looks ready for attack, but may turn into a weakness in the endgame. Black retreats its bishop to h7. White threatens the light-squared bishop again with bishop to d3, trying to remove its long diagonal. Black takes with bishop to d3 to keep the possibility of kingside castling. White retakes with queen to d3, and black moves pawn to e6, opening up a diagonal for its queen and dark-squared bishop, while preventing white's d-pawn from pushing forward. At this point, white has better development and more center control, but black has weakened white's kingside with the overextended h-pawn and has established a strong pawn structure. From here, black can develop knight to f6 for center control, develop its dark-squared bishop to b4 to get into the action, or black can develop its queen to b6 to pressure the b2 square, or c7 to pressure white's kingside. Black may also castle queenside to proceed with a solid but generally uneventful variation, or kingside for a sharper and more dynamic play. For example, if white develops bishop to f4 to prevent black from developing bishop to d6, black can check with queen to a5, white blocks with bishop to d2, black moves bishop to b4, white defends with pawn to c3, black retreats bishop to e7, white moves pawn to c4, and black moves queen to c7. Although white has gained tempo, they have weaker central pawns and black has a lot of attacking chances. After white castles queenside, black can now develop knight to f6 for more center control, white moves king to b1 for safety, black castles kingside, white moves rook to e1, black moves rook to d8, white moves queen to e2, and black begins its attack on the queen side with pawn to a5. On the other hand, white can try to exchange knights at e4, and after retreating its queen, can open up the king side for attacking chances with pawn to g4 and g5. After black threatens e4, white can respond with the advanced variation, moving pawn to e5. This opening variation gives white more space, but black also establishes a solid pawn structure in the center. Black can then move bishop to f5, white develops knight to f3, defending e5 and d4. Black moves pawn to e6, closing a pawn triangle while opening a diagonal for its dark-squared bishop. White moves bishop to e2, preparing the castle. Black moves knight to d7 to pressure e5. White castles. Black moves knight to e7. White moves knight to d2. Black pushes pawn to h6, giving its light-squared bishop space to retreat, or giving support for pawn to g5. And white develops knight to b3. From here, black can develop queen to c7, castle queenside, and attack white's kingside. Black could also solidify its position by retreating bishop to h7 and moving knight to f5 to attack d4, or black can play actively for an advantage by pushing pawn to g5. With the pawn push, black begins to pressure e5 by moving towards white's defensive f-knight, and black prevents white from threatening the bishop with knight to h4. White typically responds with knight to e1, giving space for a kingside play with pawn to f4. Black moves queen to c7, which threatens e5, supports pawn to c5, and allows queenside castling. White defends e5 with knight to d3, and black could push pawn to b6, supporting pawn to c5, bishop to g7, or pawn to f6 to generally make it difficult for white to support its center. At this point, black has achieved a relatively equal position, however both sides have many chances to gain an advantage. After black threatens e4, white can respond with the exchange variation, taking with pawn to d5, and black retakes with its c-pawn, creating a symmetrical position. This opening is very passive for white and tends to end in a draw, but black also has fewer problems to deal with compared to other lines. From here, white can develop bishop to d3, black develops knight to c6, pressuring d4, white defends with pawn to c3, black solidifies its position with knight to f6, white can move bishop to f4, giving more center control and threatening against pawn to e5, black develops bishop to g4, threatening the queen, and white moves queen to b3, attacking black's now undefended b-pawn. Black can then defend b7 with queen to d7, white moves knight to d2 to support knight to f3, black moves pawn to e6, completing a pawn chain without trapping its light-squared bishop. White now moves knight to f3, defending its center d-pawn, and black activates his bishop to d6. White can capture with bishop to d6, and black can retake with its queen, but the b7 pawn becomes undefended. However, even if white takes with queen to b7, black has good counterplay with rook to b8, pressuring b2. So, white will typically castle kingside instead, and black follows similarly. At this point, white could try to gain control of e5 with its rook because of the semi-open nature of the e-file. Meanwhile, black could push white's queenside with its a and b pawns and rooks to disrupt white's central pawn structure. Nevertheless, this position is about equal, giving black a way to equalize its opening disadvantage as white plays it safe. White could also play a trickier move after black moves knight to f6, moving pawn to h3 instead of bishop to f4. With this move, black's light-squared bishop has more difficulty developing, especially at g4, which is threatened by white's h-pawn. Now, as black moves pawn to e6, its light-squared bishop becomes blocked by the central pawn structure. To avoid this, black can instead play pawn to g6, white develops knight to f3, and black moves bishop to f5. Here, black threatens to exchange bishops, ending with doubled pawns. However, this pawn structure is not too bad, because the f5 pawn helps control the central e4 square, which can be further supported with pawn to e6.